started now. I think now's the time. How are you doing, Marilyn?
So good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us as we discuss how you can power your business with diversity and inclusion. My name is Jennifer Pearson, and I am LeaderCast Digital Content Coordinator. So today, we'll cover methods that will help you engage and diversify your workplace through a Q&A with our guest, Marilyn Tam. After the Q&A, we'll open up the chat to our audience for any questions, and just feel free to type any questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll be sure to moderate those, and we'll do our best to answer those. So please welcome Marilyn Tam, a speaker, best-selling author, consultant, board-certified executive, and corporate coach, also the CEO of Marilyn Tam Company, and the founder and executive director of the US Foundation. She formerly served as CEO of Aveda Corp, president of Reebok Apparel and Retail Group, and vice president of Nike. And you can learn more about Marilyn on marilyntam.com as well as leadercast.com. All right, then, and thank you so much once again for joining us. I really look forward to going through these questions with you and just learning more about how people can power their business with diversity and inclusion and the different methods and approaches we can take to it. Excellent. So we'll get started on our first question, which is acknowledging and managing unconscious bias begins with asking questions and making observations, as well as listening to the conversations that contribute to solutions around us. What are questions individuals can ask themselves to identify and manage their unconscious bias?
Well, this may sound funny, but first question to ask yourself is, do I have any unconscious bias? Which sounds completely like, of course, you don't know because it's an unconscious bias. But just by asking that question, it's going to make you start thinking, where am I not looking at? And so start with something simple, like other questions that might come up, like, do blondes have more fun? What? That's an old advertising slogan. But when you ask that question, then you realize that so much of what we do, what we think about, already has something that has been perpetuated in the culture that we don't really think about that's already happening. And then ask a little bit more specific question, like, do accents trigger something in my brain? I can give you a personal example. When I was running Reebok in Boston, I came with what they think is a Californian accent. Of course, I think I speak just normal like anybody else. But of course, for them, I sound very different. And they had ideas of what somebody from California should be like or would be like. And they were wondering, well, is she going to fit in? Are they going to understand? Is she going to understand us? And those judgments came up just because of my accent. So ask yourself those questions before anything else happened, before they knew anything about me or before you know anything about the other person. Thankfully, with time, they got to know me and they really understood that I was willing not only to listen, but to ask questions to understand who they were, what they are interested in, and what their background and motivations are moving forward. And so when we do that and pause and ask those questions, start with a very simple, uncharged one, like, do I have any unconscious bias? It makes you laugh. But then after that, then you can start thinking and moving forward into something much more able to really relax and look at your own self without judgment and others without judgment and say, can I listen and ask and be present to what is before I go ahead and make more determinations of what they can do, how they're going to act, what their background is, and truly allow the person to present themselves and explain themselves and be themselves without our filters.
Absolutely. And it's important to be yourself and just, open your mind to other possibilities and what people are saying so that way you can learn more about them. It's definitely something about being open. So we're diving into our second question. Developing groups that encourage support, mentorship, and collaboration is a gratifying method to power business. What is a valuable lesson you've learned from groups you've worked with that provide support and collaboration?
So important is to have groups, but in having groups, what everybody needs really is ownership of what they're doing, what they're involved in, and what they are in that group to do. So whether it's a work group, it's a social group. So the first thing is to know that you need to have that kind of interaction. And what I've been able to do is develop some groups in my different organizations where they feel that they have a say, where they feel that they have an opportunity to really share their experience, their input, and their values in a way that makes sense. So one thing that really helped my groups develop power and creativity and understanding of each other was I would have each division that reported to me choose a cause, a local cause they would want to support. And then what we as a company did was allow them 2 hours a week out of work time to focus on that. So what we then had was each division had a project which allowed them to connect with each other and also be doing something they all cared about, and then to form teams and collaborate in a way that was different from regular work, but in a way it was really work. Give you a specific example. One of my divisions when I was in a company was that they really wanted to work with developmentally as well as physically challenged children so they could have a better experience in school. And because these children were not allowed to participate in some of the activities because of their challenges, their physical or mental developmental challenges. And so what we did was we adopted this group of students in the school, and we created events for them. For example, we would have prom night for them, because they normally were not allowed to go to prom. They were either in wheelchairs or different type of things, or they had behavioral issues that we needed support with them all the time. So we turned the company cafeteria into a prom with crepe paper, balloons, music, a photo booth, all these things. And we invited them, their teachers, and their support people, and we had a prom for them. And the thing we did was we took them to another event. We had an outing for them. We took them all to the local park. We had a picnic there, and then we also had the swan boat. So they all went around the swan boats with their companions. So they really had more of a normal school activity that they normally would not have been exposed to. But what did this for the group, our company group, as well as what they learned from the community, was the ability to learn and interact with each other on something that was a passion project. And they understood how each other thought, their background, their talents, maybe outside of exactly what they were normally doing. And they made friends and they developed trust with each other. And it really was a powerful way for them to work, and also gave the company a way to outreach to the community that they would never have been able to do otherwise. The community learned about us, we learned about the community, and developed bonds that strengthened every aspect of the whole equation. And more than that, we had much more diversity than we would have otherwise, because one of the things we learned was in this whole place is that you outreach and you found much more opportunity for people to be interested in working with the company that may never have thought of it, because of now, it's real people that work here and they care.
I absolutely love that. That sounds like such a fun experience, and it's a great way for people to connect with each other outside of the workplace.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. So, what advice would you give to those that are looking to make inclusive changes within their organization so they can experience something like that as well?
Well, first thing I would just say, congratulations, because making the decision to want to be an inclusive change agent is the first step. Because once you have the interest, then everything changes because you look at the world differently. I don't know if you ever played this game that I used to have my team play. I'll say, okay, look around the room and look for everything that's green. And so they all look around the room. They come back and they say, I say, how many things of green did you see? And they all say, oh, 12, 3, whatever it is. And then I say, how many things that were blue did you see? And they realize they didn't look for anything blue because they were only looking for green things. So by being aware, I'm saying that I am interested in helping change or bring more diversity in. You've already made the first step to making change because you're now saying, my consciousness is with this to make change. So after that, after you do that first step, very important step, is then you have to say, what do I have in my network, my professional and social network that is bigger than what we have in the company, and how can I bring that in to help bring the inclusion and diversity into the company? Then you have to say, who are my allies and who are the people I need to work with to let them know that that diversity is productive, creative, innovative, and fun. And so working with your colleagues, your supervisors, with HR, and also up the chain, because ultimately for diversity to work, you have to have the commitment from the top all the way on down to the bottom. So it's understanding the whole network and starting that process and moving from there. It's really quite powerful, and it's amazing what you can do. And don't forget, just not only within your network within the company. What about your professional network? What about your associations that you work with? So that the inclusion and diversity agenda can be spread to every aspect of your life, because truthfully, it is in every aspect of your life.
Excellent, excellent. And in what ways does diversity fuel innovation and creativity?
Well, the first, you've heard the old saying, think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? That means you think outside of what you normally know. And that's what diversity and inclusion is about. You're thinking outside of what you know. The only way you know how to do that is you bring other people with different points of view and different perspectives. And that's what diversity is about. So you can see right away, historically, even if we don't, and never said it, there has always been a push for diversity and inclusion, because without it, you'll be thinking inside the box. So with that, I made this a practical part of my work. When I was running Reebok, one thing that I was doing was I was managing teams in 120 countries around the world. There's no way I can learn about everybody and everything, but I made it an effort to learn, because I know in each one of these areas, they have perspectives, talents, and understandings that I didn't have, and then maybe the central group where I was based didn't have. So whenever I travel to any of these groups, and you can do this in your own way in your company, maybe it's not the same scale, but even in different ways. And I made it a point that I had what I call Breakfast with Marilyn. And what that meant was that I would go into that location and ask to meet and have breakfast with people that were at least 3 levels down from my direct reports. And then we would just sit and chat. I would share with them my perspective on what's going on and what's important in the world, and how we can move forward as an organization. Then I would pause and I say, okay, what I need to learn from you now is, what are the 3 things that you most love about the organization? That this should be relatively easy because you hear it. And then the one thing that you would want to change, and how would you want to propose to do that? So the group would get together and start sharing. And then, because these people don't never would normally get to meet with me, they really felt empowered. And they also felt that they had a chance to really speak their mind in a place that they never had an opportunity before. And also the stories of previous meetings would get back to them. So they know that I actually took it seriously. It was not just something fun that we did and then just, okay, we won't see her for next 6 months. They knew that something happened. And the other thing that I always did was one person from the previous group meeting either join us by phone or Skype or whatever the technology was available in the area. And so that is the point person from the last meeting, and they would bring what they learned and what they have done to guide the next group. So there was a whole structure already established so that they can move forward with this in a way. So they really felt encouraged. They could speak up and they can share about what they really are passionate about. And now here's an important thing. What does a company get from all this input and working and sharing from this creativity that is being brought forth? I'll give you an example. In one place, I had a woman come from the call center. She was a call center, basically somebody answered the phone all day about complaints primarily. And she said, and she had all the good things about the company. And then she said, if I was to change one thing, I would say, why do you have the boxes, the shoe boxes this size? Because they don't fit the cartons that well, and they're too, big. And that started a whole chain of development because what she said made so much sense. The shoe boxes made the shipping cartons bigger than they needed to be, which made the shipping containers hold less material, less product than it needed to be, which meant we were shipping a lot of empty air in these containers, which was costing the company a lot of money. We went back and had the whole product and development system change, look at this idea, change the size of shoe boxes, the shipping containers and the cartons and the shipping containers all of a sudden could hold so much more product. We save literally millions of dollars every year. So the creativity and innovation that came from different levels of the organization, people that you never would probably get to hear the input of, were now emboldened, and not only emboldened, but encouraged and given input and power into making change. It was really not only fun, meaningful, but it really unleashed creativity throughout the organization. So people felt like that I'm heard. I have an opportunity to make change. My ideas matter. I'm creative. All of this comes from just respecting and honoring everyone, whatever the position, whatever diversity, wherever they are within the whole organizational chain, as well as from outside. This also made it so that it went past the walls of the company, if you will, and became something that people said, I like to work with that company because they really respect people and they're interested in making my voice heard. What I do matter.
Absolutely. I love that. That's such a creative way for people to come together and come up with a solution for the company that will benefit everyone in the long run. I mean, and it's something that you can talk about for years to come, how you all came together to do this one special thing.
You know what I just thought about, which is funny. I started about talking about thinking outside of the box, and then the story I told you is about a box.
Yes, literally and figuratively thinking outside the box.
Right, and it's just, and it's a funny story, but it's really shows how diversity and creativity comes in all forms and shapes. That we can't put boundaries on it, and we really need to be honoring of who and everyone.
Absolutely. And when you have that ownership and you're working with, people within the company, it encourages you and empowers you to keep looking for more solutions and working together to find the next challenge and overcome it together.
Right. And that's why I think diversity really comes into play, because people feel empowered. And then they say, well, they're not going to look at me and think that I'm an engineer or I'm a call center person, operator. I don't matter. Everybody feels like they matter. And that's really how we get the best from people, is because they feel like they matter and everybody matters. And that's the whole story we talk about when we talk about diversity and inclusion, because usually people think about diversity, but they don't think about the second part, which is inclusion.
Mhm.
And that really is more important in some ways than diversity, because if you bring in diversity, but you don't really integrate them into the organization, all this effort and all this work you've done to bring in the diversity is lost because
Right.
because they don't feel included, they don't feel integrated into what's important, and they're not able to contribute to the best of their ability. And either the company say, well, they're not really doing anything, or they're not adding anything to it, and the company decide that they're not worthwhile, or the people themselves self-select out because they don't feel like they're contributing and they're not able to really um, be fully live up to their potential. So it's very important for us to think not only diversity but inclusion, and that's why people say D&I, and that inclusion part is as important, if not more important, than diversity. Because if you don't even include the people you have there, no point bringing any more in because you're not going to respect them either.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next question where um, I'm curious, what are the most challenging aspect companies face as they establish and implement D&I initiatives?
Well, the most challenging thing is that um, let's back up a little bit. Usually, companies already have some kind of statement, whether on their website or on their, you know, pamphlets that they give out their new employees about diversity is important to us. But how many companies truly really do something about it? And I think that's the first challenge, is not to have it on the books or on your website or in your language, but how many companies truly use this as an advantage, as a way to really improve the company, improve the well-being of the community, improve the well-being of the world. So to think of it differently instead of just saying, "Oh, we have it already and on our website, so it's official," but it's only official, it's only worthwhile if it's actually happening. So the second challenge is, when you have a program, is how serious are you about it? Um, is it something that you bring in and then say you start with another 5%, which for some organizations is a lot, but for some it's very small, 5%, and they look at them and they say, well, they put them under scrutiny. They haven't performed anything yet, or we'll watch and see what happens. So this judgment that comes up for people coming in and not getting support is very, very challenging. Challenging for the people coming in and challenging for the organization, because if they're not welcomed in and given mentors, given support, given the tools they need to get their work done properly, it's not going to help you. Or if we go back to what we said earlier about what unconscious biases we're holding, if we have those unconscious bias going, we look at these people and like my earlier example, if we're always looking for green, that's all we're going to find. But
Mhm.
you'll never see the blue that's showing up. So it's a matter of saying, maybe we brought them in to do XYZ, but it turns out they actually have better ideas in this other area that we didn't think about. So it's a matter of saying, when you do get into implementing diversity, how are you working with it? Do you have solid follow through? Do you have leadership mandate to make it happen? Is it done so that that's actually a way for it to flourish? And so those two things, first of all, is it just lip service? And second of all, if it's not lip service, if you're actually trying to do something about it, do you let go of it before you've given enough time? Do you judge it unfairly, meaning only through the lens you understand up to this point? Do you give it the support in integrating them into the system? Do you look for the opportunities for positive to happen instead of just the negatives? So all this is a whole, I would say, system, if you will, of things that you can look at to make it work. Because all we know when we bring something new is that we don't know. If we hold that and we look for the positives and see how we can develop that, it changes everything.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for companies to be transparent and genuine, about the initiative and what they're doing within the company to diversify and include everyone in
Mhm.
and out of the company. So that also leads to my next question. How can organizations actually track the progress of their diversity and inclusion efforts?
This is a very important question. I'm so glad you asked it because um, a lot of companies have it and they put it down as I mentioned earlier, as part of the website. They might even put it down as part of the annual review. But the one thing that is most important to do is that you make it measurable in a form that is financially related to both the work performance of each person as well as the pay performance. And that makes everything different because once everybody realizes, it's tracked. And how do you track this? Then you say, okay, track it by department, track it by division, track it by uh, your customer satisfaction. You track it by your employee morale. You track it by a lot of things that maybe you don't normally think about as revenue generating. But in time, all those become very important because if you don't have the morale of the company strong, meaning all the employees feeling good about themselves, feeling good about their company, feeling they were not going to stay. If they're not feeling good about themselves, they're not performing to the high potential, they're not going to be giving you the creativity and productivity that they can. And also that, as we can tell, it's going to impact retention, but it's also going to impact recruitment because people, let's face it, with the internet, you can find almost anything out. And so if there are disgruntled employees or ex-employees, they're going to be posting about it. You're going to find out about it. You're going to have problems with retention and recruitment both. And this, of course, goes past that to customer satisfaction because social factors are much more important now because, again, of the internet and of how fast messages gets transferred is your customers are going to demand that you are a socially conscious company. So all these factors become very important. So for each member of the organization, it becomes a measure. So like in a department, you say, okay, do we measure your work with each team in which each member and establish measurable indexes? Like, do you increase your diversity by 5%, 10%, 20%? What number do we agree on and what time frame? So in each time when you can have a review, whether it is monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, bring that up as part of the issue. And when you do that, and plus is part of the pay review, it's going to get the attention. But that's one side. On the other side, as equally important so that people understand where they're going, whether they're making progress. And if they're not, how can you help them? Because everybody wants to do well. It's not a matter of saying punishment. It's about support too. So it's how do you support people if they just said, I just don't know how to do this? Can you pair them with somebody who knows how to do this? Or can you find an outside network that they can join so they can learn more about it? Internally, externally, all different ways of pulling together so that you can have a way of really measuring it and making it not only meaningful for the company, but also fun for the employees because they have another way of measuring how well they're doing and whether they are doing what they need to do to be successful. Because this ultimately is about success for everyone.
Absolutely. That was such a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. And it is about success for everyone and making sure that everyone plays a part, like plays a substantial part in making change within the organization and beyond that.
Yes,
Excellent.
I'd like to add something about diversity and inclusion because now, especially with all the challenges we have in all our cities right now, with Black Lives Matter, and there's a lot of energy and feelings involved in this. I don't want us to just let this go by. Here's an opportunity for us to really shift the consciousness of all businesses and all people in this very important issue. And I want to talk about something else. Diversity and inclusion has always been said as like it's good for the people who we're bringing in. No, it's really good for everyone. And we talked about that a little bit today. But I want to talk about an aspect we haven't talked about yet, which is about the population demographics in the world. And that's a very big picture issue that we really need to think about. This year, 2020, in the United States, is the first year that the youth of America has a majority of non-whites. Youth of America has more non-white than white children. We cannot keep going on this way because our population is not going to be able to support a white only or heterosexual male, white only leadership because they're not going to be there. Let's look at the even bigger picture than that. If you look at the world by 2050, which is only 30 years away, all the quote developed Western nations will have a negative population growth. And the biggest growth area in the world in terms of population growth is coming from Africa by 2050. So we have to all recognize the world as we know it in the Western developed world. The faces are going to change, the demographics are going to change, and where the population growth is changing. And we don't have to look very far. Look at what's happening in Italy. Italy has a negative population growth. They're already bringing in people from other countries to try to populate the Smith villages. You know, all the people have died off, and the young people have moved to cities. So this is happening to us in America too. And it's happening more and more. So diversity and inclusion is good for everyone because if we want our country and the world to survive and thrive, we need to recognize that diversity is the direction the world is moving to. And if we don't follow that, the company is not going to sustain itself and definitely not going to thrive. So I just want to share how important that is because it's not trying to even get ahead of the curve. It's just to sustain yourself and not fall behind. That's really what we're talking about when you say diversity and inclusion is important. It is crucial for your organization's survival.
Absolutely. And that's important to really educate ourselves beyond, what we currently know now, so that way we can, like you said, sustain ourselves for the future.
Mm-hmm. And something that we talked about a little bit earlier, and I want to bring back up again, is talking about acknowledging of our unconscious bias, because we really need to start there. Because I've heard from even friends of mine who said, I don't have any biases with people. I have friends who are, and you fill in the blank, whatever category that they're talking about at the moment. I have friends that are whatever it is. But let's go back and just really go back to the old saying I just said. It's a funny thing, but it's so it tracks the change in our society. It wasn't that long ago when this advertising slogan, I think it was a hair for hair color, because do blondes have more fun, so everybody was dyeing their hair blonde. That became consciousness in our, at least in the Western world, that when you have a certain thing, in this case, a certain hair color, you have more fun. And
Mm.
so the unconscious bias is so deep in every one of us. Whatever way we look, whatever beliefs we have, we hold other beliefs about other people that are set before we know them. You know, whether it's an accent, whether it's the physical appearance, whether it's their name, whether it's the national origin, whether it's their political, sexual orientation, whatever it is, we hold these. Everyone does. And it's not anything bad. It's just recognizing and dealing with them in a way that is honoring of ourselves and the other people. Because when we don't honor them, we're not honoring ourselves because we're not giving ourselves a chance to learn, to grow, and to really benefit from what's potentially there.
I can't wait until we get to the point where we ask ourselves, when we first meet someone, how can I connect with them? How can I develop
Mhm,
a stronger rapport with people? How can I make our relationship better?
mhm, mhm. Yes. And asking those questions really help get us out of that format of judgment. Usually, when we go to an, uh, an event of a group that we know, whether it's your spiritual group, whether it's your uh, industry group, you expect certain things of that group because you have already self-selected to be in that group. So just expand your self-selected group to all humanity. You are already with all everybody is human. If you go from there, then you already start lowering the barriers to what is diversity and what is inclusion. Because you not just say, this is my human group. This, you know, it's past your spiritual group, it's past your political group, past your whatever food group, and just get it to we're in the group of all humanity.
Absolutely. Um, Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and just joining us for the discussion this afternoon. It was filled with great takeaways, how people can really take that first step into powering their business and just diversifying their business and really asking themselves questions that they probably weren't asking themselves before. And I think that's a really important factor here. I'd like to open the floor to, you know, questions from our audience if they have any. So I wanted to take a minute and do that if we have any so far. And if we don't, I still have some questions that we can definitely ask.
I see that Angie have a question.
Let's see.
She said, I hear DEIA more now. I can read it for you.
Yes.
She said, I have a question. Um, you spoke about D&I, diversity and inclusion. I hear DEIA more now. What about the additional items of equity? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. So those are the four points, which is the newer conversation. Diversity, we talked about. Equity, inclusion, and access. So we won't talk about diversity anymore right now because we just did, but we'll talk about equity. Equity, I saw this very um, graphic um, demonstration of what that means. There's three people standing against a fence, and there's a baseball game on the other side. So the tall person is standing and looking at the baseball game, and there's two people next to him, one shorter and one even shorter than that. And so they said, okay, um, equality is they all stand on a box the same height. So of course, the tall guy is seeing better. The medium height person is able to get his head about this high, and he still can't see, and the shortest person can't see at all. So then they said that equity is when you give the medium height person two boxes so they can see over the ball to see the baseball game, and the shortest person three boxes so that he can also see. So the difference between equality and equity is not just giving everybody the same thing. It's giving people what they need to make the difference so that they can truly contribute to the best of their ability. Because at least now, I think most people know, even though when you track in the CEO ranks, height is not a factor in your intelligence or your capability. So we have taken that and moved that down, even though most CEOs happen to be white male over 6 feet still. So there's still that issue, but it's less of a factor than some of these other ones we're talking about. So what we want to do is get to the equity stage, which is giving people the tools they need to be able to fully contribute, instead of just saying giving them the same portion as the other people, because that's not going to get them to the ability to be able to contribute. Say like somebody who is hard of hearing, if you gave them better glasses, it's not going to help them. But if you give them a hearing aid, that's going to help them. And so it really has to be specific to the person and to the situation, instead of just saying, okay, everybody has to be even. It's not a matter of making everybody even. It's making everyone able to contribute, so that the factors that are inhibiting them is not just based on trying to make everybody the same. And then the other one is access. And that is very important, because we kind of touched upon it in what we talked about earlier. Access is talking about, do you get to speak to the people that you need? Do you get exposed to the education that you need from very young age? And we're seeing this right now with the lockdown in our country and around the world. When schooling is done remotely and there are children with no internet at home, then they're not getting access. So even though you say, okay, everybody has equal opportunity to learn, these children don't have the opportunity to learn because they don't have either the laptop or the tablet, and definitely not the internet, so that they can make a difference. So from a very simple way, that is an example of access. Another one is, of course, a physical challenge one, whether it's hearing impaired, whether it's vision impaired, whether it's physically impaired, meaning like there's no ramp for a person in a wheelchair to get up to the building, or there's no elevator for somebody who can't do that. So these things are very real, or it's a distance situation. So if somebody, if something is available, but you have to drive there, it's 2 hours away by car, and there's no public transport to get there. People who have no private vehicle or access to a way to get there are denied access. So equality, inclusion has to include equity and access, because these are all ways for us to bring it in together to make sense, and to really allow people to contribute, because otherwise, all this talk about diversity is really not going to really come to true fruition, because we're not really giving them the opportunity to be successful. It's almost like teasing them. I feel very bad, about that. It's when you say, oh, we gave them a chance, but they're not going to make it because of these other issues. I have a personal story about that. It kind of ties it. When I was first about done with college, I went to interview. And one of the places I interviewed was a very I will not name the bank now because I hope they've changed since then. And I interviewed for a job with a bank because I felt like finances is where the world makes a difference, and why don't we make that more equitable? Mm-hmm. So this is a good place to work because I can make a difference. So I interviewed with this bank, and here I am, armed with several degrees, great work experience, all this stuff. And this is some years ago because that's when I just was graduating from college. And I had what I thought was a very good interview with this recruiter who was on campus. And it was just one of the slots that you can fill, when you go up to the recruitment office, you just check in the box so they don't know who's showing. The recruiter doesn't know who shows up until they get there. So I interviewed him. I thought it was a good interview. And when I got done, and I said, when I could hear back from you, and I didn't get a really positive response. So a week later, I called him back up because be diligent and follow through. And he was very honest. He said, well, actually, we only hire women for bank tellers and receptionists. And I said, oh. And I have multiple degrees and all this stuff, and I have worked even for the governor of Oregon in economics. So I felt like I was very qualified. And he paused and he said, besides, you originally came from another country who definitely won't hire you. So that was before even he told me that I was an immigrant, a woman of color. But in other words, he talked about all the issues of access, that all the things that I was superficially that had nothing to do with my talents, all my recommendations and endorsements from people I've worked with, my educational background, my ability to handle work in whichever form, it was really not important. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are all crucial to making this happen. And as you can tell from the example, hopefully that banks don't do that anymore. It was quite sobering, and it really started me on a path of understanding how many challenges I had to overcome to be able to give back in the way that I felt like I could. And I know that many other people have even worse. And so how do we make the playing field level for everyone?
Oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened.
So great, for sure. But the thing that really shocked me was how upfront he was about it. It was not like an even issue. He just said, we would never hire a woman for other than a teller or a receptionist. And then, I was kind of flabbergasted. It wasn't that long ago. And then, I guess to fill in the rest of the blank, he said, well, besides, you came from another country originally, and we would never hire you anyway. And I'm going, okay, I guess it's over. But understanding that, how people have even more issues than me, who may not have had a chance to go to school, who may not have had the ability to actually been given some work experience so that I was able to make my way through. Besides, I'm just so stubborn, I'm going to make it no matter what. But I was so determined because I had a cause, I had a mission to fulfill, which is to help the world. So I'm not going to let somebody stop me. But maybe other people are not to that point yet. Maybe they haven't had their calling. Maybe they haven't met their mission yet. I'm just grateful that I learned mine early. So I just always encourage people, go back inside, learn what your passion is, not what the world tells you need to do. Mm-hmm. what is it that you're here to do? If you have that, then you're really aligned with what you're here to do. You can go through walls, but then you first have to learn that. And because the media is so strong and everything's so strong, a lot of people start living somebody else's lives and they don't even know they are doing
Absolutely.
that.
That company definitely missed out on such an incredible talent and a wonderful person as you. But I do have our final question where we can wrap up. And
Mm.
our mission at LeaderCast is to fill the world with leaders worth following. And right now, in your opinion, what makes a leader worth following with D&I as a focus?
In my opinion, what makes a leader worth following with the iron? I would say one that has the vision and understanding of what it takes, not only for the company, but for the world to really thrive and prosper and to survive. Because we're in a very challenging time. But also in challenging time, being Chinese, I can talk about this quite well because the Chinese word for danger is "gai," which is danger and opportunity. So in this time of highest challenge and highest danger, we have the opportunity to pivot and change and really embrace the potential that we have. And so look for a leader who has that, who is able to stand up at this time and say, yes, this is a very critical time, and we're going to use this time to shift and pivot and embrace the potential of what is, instead of saying, let's, cut the staff to the bone, drop everything, and just put our head down. This is not the time to do that. This is the time to say, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? How do we align with that? What are opportunities in this time? And how do we use these opportunities based on the situation in the world so that we can not only survive this very challenging time, but thrive when this is over? And one of the key points about diversity and inclusion, as we talked about a little bit ago, is that the population is changing. We have that as a key situation in the demographics. If we don't start looking at diversity and inclusion to bring in people from all thoughts and backgrounds into the organization, it's not going to be able to manage and survive these very critical times. So I say that whether you want to say diversity, equity, um, inclusion and access, or D&I, whatever is comfortable for you, we need to think and look for company and leaders who understand how critical this is for us to go through these times and be here still when times get good again, because it's only going to get good if more companies understand that this is crucial now. D&I, or all four uh, the acronym needs to happen now.
It definitely needs to happen now, and it requires all of us. It requires all of our work and all of our help. Uh, Thank you so much, Marilyn, for your time this afternoon. It was a pleasure speaking with you and just learning from you at this very hour. And thank you so much for myself as well as the LeaderCast team.
Oh, it's my joy. I think LeaderCast is right there as a leader in doing this, in understanding that D&I is really the movement that we need to embrace now to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for everyone that's tuned in, if you would like to see a playback of this video, we'll be sure to post it in the event pages, and we'll be sure to share it online as well. Also, if you enjoyed this conversation we had today, there's definitely more where that came from. LeaderCast 2020 Ripple Effect is October 15th. So join us and amplify your leadership impact with 6 world-class speakers. And today, if you use the code Marilyn, you'll receive $10 off your early bird ticket purchase. And you can learn more at leadercast.com/ripple-effect. And you can get all the information there. Marilyn, once again, thank you so much, and we truly appreciate you.
Thank you. It's been a joy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, and feel free to drop any questions our way if you have them. Thank you. Have a good one.